So in general benefits of ebooks and the ones that we offer, but I think even widely anymore, a lot of ebooks are accessible on multiple device types. They're scalable in the sense that, for instance, my school only bought classroom sets of textbooks and then bought online access for all of our students to have away from school. So it is possible to get access and get the books in the, quote, hands of kids a lot faster than you would with hard copies and more easily. They are dynamic and multimodal. Kids can interact with them in some ways beyond what they can even do with a hard copy. They do tend to be user-friendly. The platforms have come a long ways. And there are features in them, and I'll show you some of these that help with differentiation. And since that's one of the challenges we're facing right now, I think this is a really useful aspect. You'll want to help students explore features, and so something comparable to what I'm going to show you here in a moment. So if you can use a webinar type or a Zoom platform where you can share your screen, especially if you hadn't utilized these before we all had to move to distance learning, I think this would be really helpful. Model reading practices with an ebook might be something that you hadn't really thought about, and when you switch to distance learning. I think we do this fairly regularly across content areas, so not just, also I'm going to say not just in English classes, but we do this in our classrooms. But take a moment and model reading practices when you switch to an ebook as well. It's important to acknowledge distractors. One of the things I'm struggling with as we make this adjustment is that I have to be on my computer for most of the work that I'm doing, and therefore all of the distractions are right there in front of me. It's a lot harder to get away from them when they're necessarily in front of you. And so I think it's okay to tell, in fact, I think it's really important to tell students that it's something they'll have to navigate as well. On chunking texts, this is something that before we might have said, okay, go read chapter 5, whereas now we might need to break chapter 5 of the textbook up into texts for them, because students may struggle a little bit, especially as they're adjusting, but even just the way we take information in when it's an ebook. So maybe just read to a certain point in chapter 5. If the ebook you're using has a percentage that students have read through, you can give them percentage markers or page markers. A lot of them have pages. Here, you want to consider students' experience. You may have to support them a little bit more if you had not been using ebooks before you move to an online classroom. And internet availability, at least at the start, can be an important aspect. They may need to have downloaded it before they can use it at home if they don't have internet availability. So just something to think about. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly just to make up a little bit of time. You can always look back at them, but I'll give you a chance to read through them as we're going through. I'm going to show you some of these features on that last bullet point here in a moment. You can still have class discussions. Tomorrow's webinar, we're doing at the same time as today's. We'll go a little bit more into Launchpad. They can share their highlights and notes with you and with each other. Some different ways to differentiate, that we don't have with hard copy books a lot of times. And the platforms that we use with our ebooks allow for flashcards to be made right inside of them, so I'll show you that here in a moment. But I really want to point out this last bullet point, that the figures and images that you get through the ebook, first of all, are the same as the ones that you would have in the hard copy, and they are license approved for you to use them with sites such as Quizlet, Kahoot, iClicker. So you may take those images. For instance, in Quizlet, if you are having students learn, I'm going to say something with chemistry and the way that a cell structure works, you could take that image and put it into Quizlet directly from the ebook. So we'll take a look at how this functions. And I am, in the interest of time, and also I had closed some windows, I'm going to show this to you through VitalSource. So what you're looking at might be a little bit different depending on if you are using Bookshelf with VitalSource or if you're using Launchpad. This is the one that's fully downloaded. And I know we have support to show you how to do this. So if you are not sure how, make sure to reach out to us for access to that support. You've got your table of contents, and this is the kind of thing to show your students how to search for things. I've had students already ask me, they've been using the ebook in my classroom this whole semester, but they'll say, I can't find that story. And just like the hard copy, they forget to look at things like table of contents. But the nice thing is that you can do a search. So if we are looking at the poem, Disillusionment of 10 O'Clock, I can just search for it. Down here, you can opt to have the text read aloud. It is a computerized voice, so unfortunately it's not someone like Kenneth Branagh reading it to you, but it's still a great resource that, again, our students don't have with hard copies. You also have the option to change the size of fonts, as well as what the background looks like, the spacing between lines, which for some students who struggle to read anyway may benefit from, especially in this online format, so that can be really helpful. Students can print hard copies, so you've got some options, especially if you want them to annotate. They're really great with their phones of then taking a shot of something they've annotated and sending it. You can grab a link, so if you want to post something and make it a little bit easier for students to find it, you can do it that way. There's a notebook feature where students you can highlight a question, or students can highlight a question, and then they can include notes. So here would be an example of a prompt from a short story and a response to one of the questions that's in the textbook, right in the notebook. So the notebook feature keeps track of what's highlighted. You can also go directly to a text, but depending on what you're working on, sometimes it's easier to go directly to the notebook feature. But here this is in the text itself. And I will forewarn you that you can spend a fair amount of time, and your students will too, playing with the different highlighting options. So you already have as the default colors coordinated. And so again, if you're asking students to do this, you can tell them ahead of time, mark things with the red confused highlighter that you don't understand. If you find definitions you need to learn, mark them with the green definition, etc. You see the important down below. And then things like the groovy green or the mellow yellow are just different colors. You can also add highlighters. And I would guess you would need to direct students to do this. So for instance, maybe you tell them to pick one color that they like different from all the others to highlight things that intrigue them, for example. So I could pick purple, make it playful so that, and this is another feature you can look into, it's not necessary, but, and then you'd be able to use that. And then it really just is as simple as clicking and dragging, choosing the color that you want. You can even change it, and adding a note. I don't know what I would add about him running an insurance business in Hartford, Connecticut, but you get the idea behind it. And then it keeps track of all of that over here. Come down here, here's the flashcard option, so they can create sets of flashcards and share them, just to show you kind of how they work. And this idea that students can say that they do or don't know something, and then it will keep track of that for them.